The twin suns of the planet Velmara poured down a blazing, merciless light across the violet sand plains that stretched endlessly in all directions. The city of Sereth emerged from the desert like a mirage, its crystal towers rising into the shimmering air, their mirrored surfaces reflecting fiery dances of light on every facet. Riven Hale, a human engineer from Earth, had just stepped beyond the safe dome of the United League Embassy, where artificial climate and sealed systems kept Terrans separated from native culture. But he hadn't come all this way to hide behind walls. He came to Velmara to understand it. Grit scuffed into his boots, and sweat traced slow paths down his neck as he walked through the city, compelled by something he couldn't yet name. The native inhabitants, tall figures with blue-violet skin, avoided his gaze, drifting past beneath their sand-colored cloaks like ghosts swallowed in heat. "Off-worlder," someone muttered in that strange melodic dialect. His translator chip picked it up instantly, neutral tone and all. He could feel their stares, cold, watchful, like a wall that followed him without moving. A crowd was gathering near a sunken plaza made of dark, scorched stone, hollowed deep into the desert floor. Unlike the rest of the glittering architecture, this place was barren, grim, and carried a strange weight in the air. Something about it prickled the back of his neck. At the center of the plaza stood a black obsidian platform, and on it, a girl. She was kneeling, arms shackled to a stone pillar by glimmering strands of silver wire. Her skin bore a rich, deep violet tone, so dark it almost reached midnight blue. Her long, obsidian hair glistened like strands of wet glass, falling down her back despite the desert wind, which seemed to avoid touching her. The tattered white cloth that barely clung to her frame only deepened the raw cruelty of the scene. When she lifted her head, her silver eyes swept across the crowd, not with fear, not with pleading, but with unyielding pride. A bell rang, cold and deep, like a hammer slamming down the verdict of a trial. 3 robed figures in ceremonial garb stepped forward to the platform and halted in front of her. The woman in the center, wearing a veil of gold lace, spoke in a clear, deliberate voice. "Kaela, you are charged with disrupting harmony. You refused your designated role. You defied the arrangement made by the council." Her voice was smooth as silk, but laced with poison. Riven didn't catch every word, but the way they were spoken sent an unnatural chill down his spine. "Does anyone step forward to purify her?" the woman asked. An elderly man approached, holding a brittle branch, and flung it at Kaela. It struck her shoulder with a dry snap. She didn't cry out. She didn't even flinch. Then a second person, then a third. Handfuls of sand, sticks, stones. One by one, they stepped forward and hurled them at the girl in chains. Her white cloth turned dusty, cuts appeared on her arms, and shimmering silver blood began to trickle down her skin. Riven could barely believe what he was witnessing. Everything he'd read about Velmara described philosophy, harmony, enlightened order, not public execution. Suddenly, a young man stepped forward with a sharp rock in hand. He shouted, "For the shame she brought to my family, for refusing the role she was assigned." The rock flew through the air and struck Kaela's cheek, leaving a streak of silver blood glinting in the sun. That was the moment Riven snapped. "Stop!" he roared. He shoved through the crowd and climbed onto the platform. A stick clipped his shoulder, but he didn't slow. He stepped between Kaela and the gathering mob like a wall of flesh and fury. "What the hell is wrong with you people?" he shouted. "Throwing stones at a bound woman. Is that your idea of harmony?" Silence fell over the plaza like a heavy cloak. One of the elders stepped forward, his voice shaky but loud, speaking in broken earth standard. "You have chosen to receive purification in her stead. You are bound by the binding accord." Riven froze. What had he just done? The veiled woman, Varen, smirked beneath her veil. "The ancient law is clear," she said. "You have 2 choices. Continue the ritual and punish her yourself, or assume full responsibility for her. Take her with you, shelter her, cleanse her, through devotion." Riven didn't hesitate. "I accept. Give her to me." Kaela looked up at him, eyes torn between disbelief and defiance. When the chains fell away, the bruises on her body became clearer. "You're a fool," she murmured. "You have no idea what you've just tied your life to." Riven met her gaze and answered softly, "I only know one thing. This is wrong, and I won't stand by and let it go on." She didn't respond, but when he held out his hand, she took it. And so, from the moment Riven reached out and took Kaela's hand, an invisible thread, unbreakable, had bound two entirely different destinies together. In a land where mercy was considered weakness, where ancient laws bound every gesture, a single outsider had unknowingly disrupted the balance of an entire system. But Riven had yet to understand. That choice didn't merely make him responsible. It stirred something far deeper beneath the surface. The two left the plaza in an eerie silence, the crowd parting like sand split by a rising wave, countless cold stares following them. Kaela walked slowly, wound still fresh, her hair matted with dust and silver blood. Riven supported her without saying a word, his thoughts racing, questions piling up in his mind. "My quarters are in the western tech sector," he said finally, half to himself. "It's safer than most other zones, for now." Kaela only nodded faintly, eyes distant. It wasn't until they entered the cool interior of his semi-subterranean engineer's shelter that she finally spoke. "Do you even know what you've done?" Riven slipped off his jacket, poured a glass of water, and looked her square in the eye. "I don't know everything, but I know I couldn't stand there and watch them throw things at you like you were some kind of animal." She stared at him for a long moment, unreadable. "The binding accord isn't symbolic," she said quietly. "Once you accepted me, every action I take now reflects back on you. I am burden, guilt, and judgment. And you are the one who must bear the cost until I am declared cleansed." "How does this cleansing work?" Riven asked. "Through a series of rituals spanning several days. The first ritual starts here, the purification of the dwelling." Kaela pulled a small pouch from her torn tunic. Glowing sand particles shimmered like fragments of starlight. She sprinkled them in the four corners of the room and whispered ancient incantations. Each grain began to glow, pulsing gently as if responding to a heartbeat. Riven watched in silence. There was no sarcasm in his gaze, only awe. "The next ritual," she said softly, "is the purification of the body, and the one who bears responsibility must perform it." "You mean I have to?" Riven trailed off. Kaela tilted her head, a trace of mockery flickering in her silver eyes. "Not what your earth mind is imagining. This is a rite, not entertainment. You are to pour water over my body. Exactly 16 times, no more, no less." Moments later, she emerged from the bathing chamber wearing a thin, ceremonial robe, damp hair flowing like liquid night. Riven paused, momentarily stunned. The steam clung to her skin, catching hues of midnight and sapphire. "Still want to play the hero?" she asked, smirking. "I just want to do what's right," Riven replied, kneeling beside the basin, beginning the ritual. He let the water cascade over her shoulders, her back, her bruises. Her skin was cool, but beneath his fingers he felt something strange. Not fragility, but life, undeniable, burning quietly. "Why do they hate you so much?" he asked. "Because I refused to be what they demanded. I created things, ways to draw water from beneath the sand, small underground gardens. I did it without council approval. And I rejected Corvin, son of Elder Varen." And now the story began to take shape. "So they punished you for saying no to someone powerful?" Kaela let out a bitter laugh. "Here on Velmara, that's called breaking harmony. Their version of harmony means absolute compliance, and anyone who resists is branded a breaker." The night settled over the desert like a blanket of cold metal, but inside the small shelter where two beings from vastly different worlds now shared space, something had begun to shift. It wasn't just a ritual. It wasn't just an ancient law. It was the meeting of conscience and pride. But when dawn arrived, Riven would learn that this bond came with consequences far deeper than he could ever imagine. When the final blue star of the Velmaran night faded beyond the edge of the dunes, Velmara entered a new day. And with it came the first true trial in Kaela's purification ritual. Riven awoke in the dim light of his modest shelter, unaware that today his very understanding or misunderstanding of the concept of harmony would be tested before the full gaze of the council. A soft chime rang from the wind bell made of crystal petals as the door opened. A messenger from the council appeared, his face masked in ceremonial sandcloth, holding a black wooden box. Kaela bowed slightly, receiving the box and opening it in front of Riven. Inside lay a scroll made from processed plant fiber, sealed with violet wax stamped with the sigil of the Velmaran Council. 3 interlocking rings, symbols of order, submission, and sacrifice. "What is this?" Riven asked. "The first ritual, form of harmony. An ancient rite in which you, the bearer, must sculpt a symbol of what you believe harmony truly means. Not through words, but with sand." "I have to sculpt? Out of actual sand?" "Yes, sacred sand. You have 1 hour." The sacred sand was poured onto a flat stone table. This wasn't ordinary sand. It shimmered with faint purple-blue hues, each grain pulsing as though alive, reacting to emotion and thought. Riven sat down, hands trembling slightly. He was an engineer, not an artist. Every time he tried to force a shape from logic or intention, the lines twisted, the result lifeless. "You're trying to control it," Kaela said from behind. "But harmony doesn't come from control, it comes from understanding." Her words struck something deep within him. Riven took a breath, loosened his grip, and let the sand flow through his fingers like water. He stopped thinking and began feeling. Gradually, movement took form. The sand curled, spiraled, stretched, like waves rippling toward a shore. The image emerged, a rising swell, fluid and graceful, then fading into a soft arc. A whisper within a storm. "You found your shape," Kaela murmured. When the messenger returned and looked at the creation, he remained silent for a long moment. Then he gave a single nod, accepted. Riven exhaled deeply. He didn't feel triumphant, only relieved. "How many trials are there?" he asked as the messenger departed. 7. Each represents a facet: understanding, endurance, confrontation, rejection, protection, and sacrifice. "Great. Sounds like a vacation in hell." Kaela chuckled softly. For the first time, her smile wasn't laced with irony. It was real. "But you just overcame the hardest one," she said, "letting your emotions guide you." Outside, the first wind of the day carried soft grains across the dunes. But inside the small shelter where 2 lives now intertwined, a spark of understanding had just been lit. Though the path ahead remained uncertain, Riven was no longer walking, guided only by instinct. He had begun a journey greater than himself. After the first trial, form of harmony, Riven believed he was starting to grasp the world called Velmara. But the trials that followed demanded not his hands, but his heart. And in the shadows of ancient rites, not all tests would come from the council. The one he was protecting had her own ways of testing him, in far more personal, dangerous ways. The second day began with a soft knock on the sand curtain door. A female messenger arrived, carrying 2 bowls of clear water, one for Riven, one for Kaela. The next rite, endurance beneath the burning. You must stand motionless beneath the noonday sun, balancing this bowl of water on your head. No movement, no breaks, until the second sun sets. Kaela said nothing. She simply glanced at Riven, gauging whether he would flinch. "How long?" "About 5 Earth hours," she replied. "But time won't break you. Doubt will." The desert heat sliced across his skin like blades. Velmara's twin suns showed no mercy, their light striking straight down like twin swords. Riven stood alone in the rear courtyard of their shelter, the water bowl balanced perfectly atop his head as sweat poured down his back. Hundreds of thoughts screamed in his mind. Why am I doing this? For a woman I just met? Because of compassion? Or something deeper? As the afternoon shadows began to shift, Kaela appeared silently beside him. She didn't speak, didn't touch him. She only watched. When the second sun finally kissed the horizon, she stepped forward and lifted the bowl from his head. The water was still full. "You've passed." Riven collapsed, gasping for breath. There was no glory in it, only exhaustion. "This is what you call harmony?" he groaned. "No," Kaela said quietly. "This is what we call endurance. Harmony comes after." That night, under the low flickering lights of their quarters, Kaela began to change. She no longer kept her distance. Instead, she became suspiciously gentle. She moved freely through the space in a translucent robe, her wet hair loose down her back. Her voice softened. "On Earth, do couples touch each other during rituals?" she asked. "Do your people see emotion as weakness?" Riven shifted awkwardly. Then she did more deliberate things. She let her cup of tea slip, bent low to pick it up, her robe sliding from her shoulder, exposing just enough. Her eyes locked on his. "If I am part of you now," she murmured, "would you claim your right as my bearer?" "What right?" "The right to possess. In ancient law, the bearer has authority over the judged, even the physical." Riven was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, "I didn't come here to possess anyone. I came because I couldn't watch someone treated like garbage, whoever she was." Kaela said nothing. Her gaze darkened. A moment later, she turned her back and whispered, "You've passed my test." The next morning, another trial arrived. Defense before the triad. Riven was to defend his decision before 3 elders in a formal inquisition. Kaela was not permitted to accompany him. As he prepared to leave, she said only, "Be careful. They will try to trap you in your words. One slip could render me uncleanable." "I won't let that happen. You said the same yesterday, and I'm still here, aren't I?" She said nothing, only handed him a silver ring etched with the wave symbol. Her design. "Keep this. It's part of me." The inquiry was brutal. The elders launched a barrage of twisted questions. "You, an outsider, believe you have the right to define our culture? If Kaela is a disruptor, why do you believe she is worth saving?" Riven answered with the only thing he knew for certain. "Because I've seen how you treat her. And that's not order. That's violence. And me? I choose to stand beside the one being stoned, not those doing the stoning." They fell silent. At last, one of the elders said, "Temporarily accepted, but the next trial will be the trial of choice." When Riven returned home, the skies of Velmara burned red with an oncoming sandstorm. Kaela was already waiting in the corner, her gaze no longer cold, but tired. She didn't ask. He didn't need to say. In that silence, something reconnected, but neither of them knew that the next trial would not come from the council. It would come from the very enemy who had once condemned Kaela, and was now planning a trap that could destroy them both. They had passed 3 trials, and something between Riven and Kaela had shifted. But just as trust began to take root, the long-buried hand of those in power reached out again. What they feared was not just a girl accused of breaking harmony, but a man willing to protect her before the eyes of an entire planet. That night, Velmara was no longer quiet. The wind screamed through the dunes and the shielding panels of the tech district shivered, as if bracing for a storm that hadn't yet arrived. Riven awoke to a sharp ping from the communication system. Not a message from the council. It was an invitation. A line appeared in ancient Velmaran glyphs, translated by his interface into Earth Standard. "Bearer of the Accord, come to the Hall of Sand before sundown. Refusal is a denial of purification. Disobedience is a crime. Varen." Riven sat up, muscles tensed. Behind him, the door creaked open. Kaela stood there, her hair tangled, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "They've made their move." "A trap?" he asked. "No doubt. The Hall of Sand is where honorable sacrifices are performed. If they can't condemn me by old law, they'll use ritual to justify erasing me. And I have to go? You can refuse, but they'll claim you lack the courage to see purification through, and I'll be branded as permanently unclean, our link declared corrupted." Riven gave a dry laugh. "Sounds like the kind of sanctified authoritarianism Earth gave up centuries ago." Kaela didn't laugh. She only said, "If you go, know this, Corvin will be there." The name he had only heard in quiet mentions finally came forward, the one Kaela had refused, son of Elder Varen, the man who'd manipulated the council to see her bound in chains. The Hall of Sand rose from the desert like a buried jawbone, half of it ancient crystal, the rest compressed sand, forming the shape of a colossal cocoon. Riven entered alone, no weapons, no armor. Only the silver ring Kaela had given him, gleaming faintly under the dim ceremonial light. Varen sat on the central dais, ceremonial staff in hand. Corvin stood beside her, tall, broad, face hardened by contempt. Outworlder Varen spoke, her tone as smooth and deadly as desert glass. You have crossed the threshold of tradition, but you still have a chance to do what is right. Right for whom? Riven asked. Corvin stepped forward, slamming his staff on the sand. Relinquish her, nullify the accord, return her fate to the council. You will be allowed to leave Velmara. Your honor will remain intact, and she will be ended. Quickly, painlessly. You mean executed? Riven said flatly. No, we call it restoring harmony. Riven stared directly into his eyes, unmoving. And if I refuse? Varen answered. You will be bound to the blood oath trial, an ancient rite where you must battle those who accuse you. If you lose, you die. She will be branded forever unclean, her lineage erased from memory. The air in the chamber grew thick, the scent of sacred sand mixed with cold metal. And if I win? Varen's mouth twisted beneath her veil. You will be the first outsider to break a verdict without punishment. But even that will be enough to shake Velmara to its foundations. When Riven returned, Kaela was waiting. She didn't ask. She only looked at him for a long time. I won't let them kill you, Riven said. And if you die? She asked. He didn't answer. You should know this, Riven Hale. The Blood Oath trial isn't just combat. It's a soul trial. When your blood hits the ground, the energy release triggers the soul light. If you lie, if you fear, if you hide desire or betrayal, it will be seen by all. And if I have nothing to hide, then you'll be the first light in a long night. Tomorrow, Riven would enter a life or death trial, one that would bear not only his body but his soul to the judgment of a world. But as he sat quietly, watching Kaela asleep on the stone bench, her lips murmuring his name in sleep, he understood one thing. He was no longer an engineer from Earth. He was the bearer of the accord, and he would fight for her. When the dawn slowly lifted the veil of night from Velmara's deserts, each grain of sand shimmered crimson under the dual suns, as if foreshadowing the blood about to be spilled. It was not merely the start of a new day, but the beginning of an ancient trial where deception could not hide, where the truth burned with blinding force in every strike. And in the circle of the blood oath, Riven Hale, a human alone, would not only fight with his body, but with his soul, laid bare for all to see. The arena was carved into the heart of the Red Mountains, a place known as the Breathing Stone Hollow, where every breath echoed from the cliffs as if ancestors themselves were watching. The stands were filled. Elders, council observers, even ordinary citizens of Velmara had gathered to witness the battle with no concealment. At the highest dais sat Varen unblinking. Beside her stood Corvin, already armed, a staff of living crystal engraved with the interlocked symbols of power, harmony, and blood. Riven, by contrast, carried only a plain wooden staff given to him by Kaela before he left their shelter. It held no magic, no edges, just a handle, and her voice still in his memory. Don't let the staff guide you. Let your will guide the staff. The elder presiding over the rite raised his voice. By Velmaran law, the bearer of the accord and the accuser shall reveal their truth through combat. When blood touches the earth, soul light shall ignite. And if that light resonates, the truth shall be recognized. A gong rang. Sand swirled into spirals. The battle began. Corvin struck first, fast, brutal, relentless like a desert storm. Riven dodged, barely avoiding the first strike. The second blow struck his shoulder, sending pain slicing through his arm. You're a fool to think you can protect her from me, Corvin bellowed. She belongs to me. To deny that is to defy sacred law. Riven didn't reply. He stepped back, parried, then countered with a sweeping strike. Wood met crystal. A burst of violet light exploded, the soul light. The crowd held its breath. From beneath Riven's skin, amber light unfurled, steady, warm, like the rhythm of a heartbeat. It wasn't a light of rage. It was resolve, compassion, and something unnamed growing stronger each day. Corvin saw it. He hesitated for the first time. He knew, if his own soul light failed to shine pure, he would lose. Even if he stood, he struck harder, but his strikes grew erratic, more force than focus. What did she give you? He roared. Her eyes? Her body? No, Riven answered, parrying again. She stood tall when everyone told her to kneel, and I chose to stand with someone like that." Korvan screamed and lunged one final time. This time, Riven didn't back down. He ducked, spun, twisted his staff in a defensive arc, deflected the blow, and delivered a clean strike, not to the head, but to Korvan's weapon arm. The crystal staff flew from his grip and shattered against the stone floor. Instantly, a red-violet glow flared from Korvan's chest, soul light. But his light was unstable, flickering like a dying flame. Within it was no truth, only power, bitterness, and possession. Riven stepped forward, pressing the end of his staff into the ground before Korvan, not to strike, only to look him in the eye. "That's not love," he said. "That's hunger, wrapped in the name of law." The entire arena fell silent. The presiding elder rose. The soul light still hung in the air, amber and blood-red, spiraling like ghosts made of fire and memory. He spoke. "The bearer has prevailed. Korvan, your soul is not pure. The accusation is null. Kaela Thren is to be released from judgment." Kaela gasped, not from triumph, but from disbelief. Riven exited the arena to a thunderous hush, not cheers. He reached Kaela, body bruised, eyes red from heat and blood. "I kept my word," he said. She embraced him, for the first time, without hesitation. "And I was wrong to think you couldn't understand this world." High above the arena, Varen watched in silence. Another elder leaned close and whispered, "He's done what no one else has." An outsider forced Velmara to acknowledge his light. Varen clenched her jaw. But inside her, a deeper fear bloomed. If one outsider can change the fate of the judged, how many of our sacred laws will fall next? A light that pierces the dark does more than kindle hope. It exposes every crack. Riven Hale's victory in the soul trial had shaken the foundation of Velmara's long-standing authority. But not everyone welcomed that light. While the crowd remained silent in awe and confusion, the darkness had already begun preparing its next move. 3 days after the trial, the atmosphere in the tech sector, where Kaela and Riven lived, had shifted. It wasn't loud, but heavy, like a pressure waiting to explode. Kaela spent most of her time silent by the window, eyes fixed on the violet dunes. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. She no longer tested Riven with riddles or games. Whatever bond had just begun between them felt more fragile than ever. Riven sensed it. He walked into the room and set down a small wooden box. "What's that?" she asked softly. "A gift from the United League Embassy. They've authorized my departure from Velmara, and they've offered to let you come too, as a cultural refugee." Silence wrapped the room. "They think I'll just run," Kaela said, almost laughing. "After all this? They think if we stay, we'll deepen the division. They're afraid we've become a symbol." "And you? Do you want to leave?" Riven looked at her a long time. "I came here for a mission, but I stayed because of you. So if you leave, I leave." She turned away, silver light glinting at the corner of her eye. "If I leave, I'll be a fugitive. But if I stay, I become the one who challenges a system that once tried to destroy me. You're not alone anymore." "No. Now I'm a symbol, right?" Riven said nothing. Sometimes silence was the only truth. Just then, the comm device beeped. A glowing image flickered to life from the message crystal. Elder Sereth, one of the silent observers from the trial. "Kaela Thren, Riven Hale, the council is preparing a special session. But first, someone wishes to meet you privately." "Who?" Riven asked. "Elder Soren," Kaela whispered, her eyes widening. "The keeper of the old archives." Elder Soren was unlike any other council elder. He lived in the far north, among towers of stone that rose like frozen waves from the sand. He was older, slower, but his gaze was sharper than steel. When they entered his archive, he was already waiting. "You think the trial was the end," he said. "But no, the soul light you released, Riven Hale, has awakened old prophecy." "What prophecy?" Kaela asked. Soren unrolled a brittle scroll, pointing to a faded line. "When one not born of sand reveals a pure heart, the breaker shall become the builder, and Velmara shall face 2 paths, rebirth or ruin." Kaela froze. Riven clenched his fists. "You mean they'll make us choose?" "No," Soren said. "They'll force you to choose. Either become tools for a new order, or be branded traitors and made an example." "What do we do?" Soren looked at them both, eyes hard as obsidian. "Do nothing. Yet. But if you want to live, and if you want real change, then you must bind yourselves not just by the accord, but by true trust. He placed two objects before them, two necklaces made of living crystal, carved with mirrored shapes, like two halves of the same T. This is the equilibrium bond. Only those who have faced soul trials together may wear it. Once worn, your light becomes one. It cannot be denied, it cannot be betrayed. Kaela stared at the necklaces, then looked at Riven. A bond deeper than mating, she whispered. No longer a rite, this would be real. That night, Velmara once again fell silent. But far beneath the council chambers, Veron stood before a holomap of the desert, where small points of light now pulsed, faint signals of resistance beginning to awaken. They're believing, one officer said. They think the light between those two is a sign of change. No matter, Veron whispered coldly. We'll let the fire burn and lure it where we want. And when it gathers strength, we'll burn them with it. The fire of defiance had been lit, but it was still small. Kaela and Riven now held in their hands the power to unify or to shatter. But they did not yet know, to change a world, they would have to risk everything, including each other. On a planet where every gust of wind carried the scent of ancient law, and every grain of sand had once witnessed the crushing of defiant souls, two beings, one of earth, one of stars, had finally stepped beyond ceremony into truth. But when the bond was sealed, it was no longer their story alone. It became a spark, igniting flames across Velmara, and no one, not even the council, could stop a fire that began with hearts set free. Night had fallen, cloaking the old, abandoned temple in stillness. It was once the ceremonial heart of Velmara, now a forgotten relic buried in time. Here, away from the council's gaze, Kaela and Riven stood face to face, not as bearer and judged, but as equals. Elder Sauron was the only witness. No robes, no chants, no pretense, only two souls that had endured. Before them lay two crystal necklaces, shaped like twin fragments of a whole, pulsing faintly with the resonance of the soul trial they had survived. Sauron spoke. The equilibrium bond does not bind flesh, it binds will. From the moment you wear these, your true emotions, fear, doubt, longing, hope, will be felt by the other, as if they were your own. Kaela held her necklace. Her eyes were no longer sharp like blades. They were tired, vulnerable, searching. If you feel my fear, she said softly, you won't think I'm weak. If I feel it, Riven answered, I'll hold your hand until it fades. They placed the necklaces around each other's necks. The moment the crystal touched their skin, a soft light surged outward from their chests. The glow merged in midair, a unified pulse, no longer two separate hearts, but one signal echoing through the silence of the temple. There were no words, but both felt the same truth. I and you had become us. The wave of energy traveled deep beneath the surface. Forgotten resonance nodes, ancient remnants of Velmara's earliest civilization, began to flicker to life. Faint pulses of blue, silver, and amber glowed beneath cracked stone and ancient wells. All across Velmara, from hidden villages to underground farms, people who had once been cast aside, the unwanted, the unclean, the creators and outcasts, felt something stir. The stories spread like wind. The accord bearer and the breaker had completed the soul bond, not through permission, not through law, but through truth. And with it came whispers. If they can stand together, why can't we? If an outsider can light our soul, who is truly foreign anymore? In their quarters, Kaela leaned against Riven's shoulder, their shared light still glowing dimly through the bond. I felt something from you, she whispered. A fear. Like you're afraid of losing something precious, but you won't say it. Because I don't know if I deserve to keep it, Riven replied. Then let me carry it with you. The moment was quiet, gentle, until a sharp alert rang from the comm system. Urgent notice. The Council has ordered all unauthorized gatherings dissolved. Any leaders of soul-bonded factions must surrender immediately. Further unrest will be classified as rebellion. Far away, deep beneath the Council stronghold, Varan stared at a holographic map. Points of light, resonance pulses, were blinking in synchronized waves. Her control was slipping. They believe, a general muttered. They think that bond was the beginning of change. No. Varan whispered. Let it burn, let them gather, and when the light is at its brightest, we'll strike, so no one ever dares shine again. On a world where every encounter had once been dictated by law, where every voice had once been silenced by the weight of tradition, someone had finally stood up. Not a god, not a sovereign, but a girl who had once been chained in the center of a silent plaza. Now, Kaela was no longer a whispered name in the shadows, but the first voice of something that Velmara could no longer ignore. Night blanketed Velmara, yet the lights from the ancient resonance points did not fade. They burned stronger than ever. Blue, silver, and amber pulses emerged from beneath the sand, from cracks in the ground, from places long abandoned, signaling not just energy, but awakening. Riven stood atop a ridge of stone, watching them come. People from every corner. Miners, engineers, the outcast, the exiled, even artists once banned from creating. They brought no weapons, only tools. Water extractors, broken garden models, and replicas of Kaela's forbidden designs. They're not bringing blades, Riven whispered. They're bringing survival. They've learned, Kaela replied. To survive here is already an act of defiance. A large circle formed at the heart of the desert. At its center, Kaela stood. Not in ceremonial robes, not with veils or weapons. Just her, a silver necklace on her chest, and a voice that refused to tremble. I am not here to destroy the council, she said. I am here because I once knelt. I once stayed silent. I once believed I was wrong, for creating beauty, for saying no to a man in power, for refusing to bow. The wind paused. The desert listened. But thanks to someone from beyond our stars, I realized harmony is not obedience, harmony is empathy. It is seeing each other as people. I do not call for war, I call for awakening. One by one, the people stepped forward, placing their hands on her designs, on the glowing resonance crystals, as if saying, we remember, we choose. News spread fast, to the heart of Sereth, to the chambers of the council. Emergency session. Varan struck her staff against the stone floor. She is no longer an individual. She is a symbol. If we do not extinguish her now, no one will fear us again. Another elder hesitated, but her accord is complete. Their soul light was verified. If we act now, we break our own law. Then, Varan hissed, we change the law. Back in the tech sector, Riven received the message. The council had declared all soulbond gatherings illegal. Kaela was marked for arrest, not for her past, but for her influence. They want me back in the plaza, Kaela said calmly. Not to bind me, but to erase me, quietly, without witnesses. We won't let that happen, Riven said. The first time I stood in front of you, it was out of rage. This time, it's because I believe in you. No one saves Velmara alone, but maybe we can save a way of seeing, and from there, everything can change. A desert storm howled from the east, but this time, it didn't just carry sand. It carried footsteps. From the mines, from the wells, from the stone towers, Velmara's people marched toward the plaza once more. No banners, no chants, only one truth etched in every eye. No one will be chained again. From the high tower of the council stronghold, Varan watched them come, her gaze sharp as ever. So be it, Kaela, she whispered. If you want light, then I will give you light, but it will be the last light you ever see. The day Kaela had once been chained in the heart of Sereth had returned. But this time, she didn't enter the plaza alone. She wasn't a criminal. She wasn't a broken body. She wasn't a soul offered to appease the crowd. Now she stood, not in shame, but with light. And this time, that light was not hers alone. It was the shared fire of hundreds who had found their voice in hers. The Plaza of Sereth, once the iron fist of the council, had become a flame. Not of fire, but of presence. The people didn't arrive in formations or with weapons. They brought nothing but themselves, each carrying a symbol. A shard of water crystal, a piece of Kaela's old models, or simply the memory of someone lost to the so-called order. At the center, Kaela and Riven stood atop the obsidian platform where she had once knelt. Now, she stood tall. Varan arrived, leading the remaining elders. She looked unchanged, but her voice no longer rang with authority. It trembled at the edge of silence. This gathering violates council law, she declared. You are creating chaos. Kaela said nothing at first. She raised both hands, the light of her and Riven's soul bond glowing visibly between them. If this is chaos, Riven spoke, then maybe chaos is the only thing that's ever truly seen us. A second elder's hand trembled. Some among the crowd began to kneel, not from fear, but from reverence. Kaela stepped toward Varan, her voice even. I do not seek your throne. I only ask you to listen. To the ones you never asked. Do you hurt? Do you thirst? Do you dream? Order must be preserved, Varan snapped. No, Kaela replied. Order must serve life. If not, it's just a golden cage. From beneath the plaza, ancient resonance nodes activated. Crystals long dormant glowed with light, networks once used for control, now blazing with unity. Elder Soren stepped forward, scroll in hand. In the buried laws you concealed, he said, there is one line. When order no longer protects justice, those who break the law shall become its guardians. Varan stood frozen. The law she had used to condemn Kaela had now turned against her. Another elder removed their robe. One by one, they knelt before Kaela, not as a ruler, but as a voice that could no longer be silenced. Kaela stepped back and took Riven's hand. I never wanted to be worshipped. I only wanted to be human. And you did something no god ever dared, Riven whispered. You listened. 3 months later, the old council was dissolved. A new council was formed, its members chosen from all walks of Velmaran life. Engineers, gardeners, teachers, former outcasts. Kaela refused every position. She and Riven boarded a starship not to flee, but to carry a message back to Earth, that there was once a planet that punished light, but learned to embrace it. As the ship broke through Velmara's atmosphere, Riven asked, if you could go back, would you do it all again? Kaela squeezed his hand, the glow from their bond still flickering like a heartbeat. No, she said, because it was being chained that gave me the strength to walk far enough to be free.